Hi, and welcome to the weekly predictions based on astrology for the week of November 29, 2021. In terms of the stock market direction, I think the first half of the week, so Monday through Wednesday, are going to be up days, and I think Thursday and Friday will see market going down. In terms of the important influences for each day of the week, I think Monday, when we will have Sun conjunct Mercury, is going to be quite a busy day in terms of the news. And the news will focus on things like travel, communication, transportation, commerce, retail sales, and also anything related to things like foreign relations, immigration, ambassadors, judges, legal changes or lawsuits, and things of that nature. And the news may again involve perhaps some trade deals or some contracts being signed, or perhaps consideration for changes in some, again, legal requirements, especially when it comes to communication and transportation. And some of the industries that may be affected involve like car manufacturers, again, transportation companies, and as well as higher level education. Generally speaking, from the 26th through about the 30th, the influence that is currently present is going to, again, bring focus on the communication, transportation, retail sales, as well as education or anything to do with young people. So perhaps services or products that are geared towards younger population. And there again, the news may focus on things like new deals, new opportunities, new leadership, and new products or something that's innovative, something that aims at improving either accessibility to certain services, such as maybe computers or internet access, whatever that may be, transportation, improving something, offering more options, or basically coming up with some new innovative ideas in those areas. And weather-wise, again, through the 30th, we may see increased news about things like windy weather, excessive precipitation, and basically a lot of windy and kind of a rainy weather, as well as increased probability for floods. And indeed, last week I did predict, when we had Sun and Mercury conjunct the south node of the moon, I did predict that there will be news about leaders and perhaps changes in the leadership. So from about the 22nd through the 25th, when those conjunctions between Sun and Mercury and the Ketu or south node of the moon were precise. And I guess there was some news about, I think it was about Federal Reserve. However, this Monday, we just saw some news about, the Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey is leaving, and there will be, of course, a change in leadership. And so that one came up a few days past the exact Mercury South Node conjunction, which was on the 25th. But on the 29th, actually, it's interesting that when the news came out publicly is when Sun and Mercury were exactly conjunct. So that was interesting to me. But generally speaking, this conjunction between Mercury and Sun is going to be in effect, like I said, for the at least first half of the week. So continuing news about communication, transportation, again, changes in the leadership or some new products, or even the change in the direction, and that's globally, and also specifically for the US, through about, I'd say, also about the 30th, especially the early part of this week, we'll also see some news about either new directions or new goals, again, when it comes to transportation, communication, social media, anything to do with like retail sales, exchange of ideas, exchange of, goods, products, shipment, and things of that nature. And another important transit that will be in effect through about the 30th, and it looks like the influence has already started on the 26th, which was last Friday. I did previously predict back in like February of this year that the influence would start on the 27th, and expected the 27th through the 30th to see news about oil, concerns about travel, maybe some changes or maybe travel restrictions either be implemented or lifted, drop in oil prices, and I did expect that to be coinciding with the trine between Mars and Neptune that we currently are experiencing, and I did expect that to start right about on the 27th. And it does look to me that it had already begun on the 26th, which is when we saw a large market sell-off, also drop in oil prices. And again, I attribute it to the influence of the Mars trine Neptune, which basically trine facilitates the energy, and it flows without obstructions. It flows maybe faster, and so basically it helps things to spread, I guess, faster, spread without being kind of restricted. And Neptunian things that are associated with things like oil, gas, chemicals, infectious diseases, water, anything to do basically with marine life, maritime transportation, seafood, beverages, you name it. And with Mars bringing its energy of getting things basically done more aggressively, faster, with kind of a more zest, so to speak, basically we can expect that this focus on concerns about the new COVID variant, this Omicron variant, or perhaps concerns about any other really infectious diseases coming up at this time, or news about just oil, pharmaceuticals, chemicals, etc., will be in effect through about the 30th. And of course, we already saw some news even today. I saw there was some big fire, which again is Mars, at a factory near Santiago, Chile. And I guess there was a lockdown there due to just plumes of smoke. And that's another sort of manifestation of Neptune, is anything that's poisonous, chemicals, gases, etc. And Mars, of course, is fire. So in addition to drop in oil prices or even on gas prices, concerns about, again, infectious diseases spread, we may also hear about either oil pollution, water pollution, spread of some gases, spread of some chemicals, or even increased news about maritime transportation. So something along the lines of perhaps increased movements of various boats, shipments over, by sea, and or even underwater. So any sort of underwater pipes, pipelines that transport liquids, such as oil pipelines, for example, oil rigs. And there it could be something along the lines of things moving faster than before, and something spreads faster because perhaps it's undetected, like some sort of submarine or something, or even some gas that can, again, spread because it's either undetected or because it's hard to stop it, because, again, water seeps everywhere and it's just kind of hard to stop it because there is no single point of origin, so to speak. At the same time, again, there may be just spread of something that's like poisonous, or spread of, again, just simply excessively wet weather, and so again some areas may experience excessive flooding, and that will be with us through about, like I said, the 30th of November, after which I think things will pick up in terms of the oil prices and things will rebound, and as well as the concerns about say infectious diseases, including this Omicron variant, may also subside, at least on a relative scale. Also worth mentioning are the predictions that I made for China for last week, that the 26th through the 28th of November will see increased focus on things like finance, real estate, assets, banks, savings, costs, and things of that nature, and that there may be some push for projects or for announcements that basically aim to preserve earnings or preserve the assets, and basically there may be some concerns about those areas. And indeed, this Monday I did see that there was some news about the shares of the Evergrande group falling even further, about 5% on Monday, and there was also news about another company, also real estate, I guess, developer, I think it was called Fantasia, also basically experiencing some trouble, financial troubles, and so that was interesting as far as the feedback on the predictions that I made last week. Now let's take a look at the preview for the following week, the week of December 6th through about the mid-December, because this seems to be like a very volatile time to me in terms of there potentially being large swings in the stock market. And in the near future, the days of December 7 and 8 will be significant, and after that, right around the 14th, 15th of December, plus minus a few days, look like significant dates with a lot of events that may be occurring, as well as, like I said, market swings. And in particular, I think there initially may be a massive drop, perhaps as early as the 6th of December, but more likely the 7th and 8th, and that may have to do with just there being some news that may spook the investors, and this could be related to some legal decisions, some increased regulations, or some concerns about financial losses that would particularly affect things like airlines, air travel, aerospace projects, telecommunications, IT companies, electric vehicle manufacturers, any tech companies really, and as well as area of finance and currencies, and in particular cryptocurrency. So those could be two parallel sort of streams of events. So perhaps some concerns about air travel and, IT, tech, communications, telecommunications could be sort of an independent sort of developments. At the same time, there may also be, in addition to that, some regulations or some constraints imposed where it comes to currencies, in particular cryptocurrencies, and those news may, like I said, spook investors and make them feel sort of uncertain, and or they may elicit some anger or protests, and basically all of those are not very supportive influences. So I believe that we may experience a really significant drop in the market. At the same time, there will also be a difficult transit between Mars and Jupiter, and basically Mars, it kind of is a planet that it's typically associated with upsets and either accidents, fires, explosions, but also just angry sort of a mood or sense of disagreements, upsets, etc. And Jupiter just makes things larger or more massive and escalate kind of more quickly and spreads, literally like wildfire. So here what we may experience is where, again, some news about some restrictions may come up, or some regulations, or even just concerns about debt losses, financial losses, for example, maybe like some tariffs or insurance rates, really any of that. And again, that may spook the investors, where there may be really massive sell-off. And after that, following immediately, right on the 9th, approximately, of December, there may be this, investors may jump in on the buying opportunity. And then again, on the very following day, on the 10th, market yet again may drop. And so if there are indeed protests or perhaps some skirmishes, like along the borders, in some international, some international borders, or anywhere, if there's some protests over, say, some sort of a legal verdict or over a legal decision of some sort, that may, like I said, elicit protests either within individual countries and also along the borders between the countries. And so if that indeed is going to be happening the week of the 6th of December, I believe it may escalate further and peak right around the 13th through the 15th of December. And that period itself, right in the middle of December, is also going to be significant, where we will have Mars conjuncting Ketu South Node. And as I mentioned in my previous video with some specific examples what happened previously, typically this time coincides with a variety of accidents, like shakeups where the leadership changes, some military skirmishes, accidents, especially with things related to train derailments, for example, or airplane accidents, or various like bombings, attacks, fires, explosions. Those are all related to Martian influence, basically. And on top of that, also middle of December into late December is when we will have another tightening of the square between Uranus and Saturn, and that itself also is significant because it typically coincides with increased problems along the lines of earthquakes, some structural damage, be it because, structure is just old and it kind of falls apart sort of on its own just because some part is just too old and it crumbles, or again due to earthquakes, or due to just kind of lack of maintenance of something, and with Uranus pushing, Saturn's button, so to speak, it may happen very suddenly without, proper preparation. And so again, if there are problems that may begin already this next week, they may further escalate in the middle of December. And that's global influence. And in addition to that, right around the 15th is when we will see some important transits to the chart of the US that typically coincide with some fiscal decisions or decisions that affect USD value. And coincidentally, also it typically basically pushes investors into something more stable as far as perhaps oil, gold, and or silver. And at the same time, basically we can expect in the middle of December some news out of the US that are related to fiscal policies, news about USD value changing, perhaps going down, and at the same time increase investments in gold and silver. So certainly interesting weeks ahead. And so at the very end of December, after that, what we can expect is yet again different change sort of in dynamic. We will have, like I said, this peak of the Saturn square Uranus influence, which coincides with, again, just some shakeups in the existing structures, either physically, so again, earthquake, or just some structural damage like maybe a rock slide, mudslide, etc., or just literally an accident due to some old part malfunctioning, and or shakeups at the tops of the, say, established corporations, governments, or an old leader is being removed. Old leader steps aside just because there's a need for change, but with the transit being square, that change may be too abrupt, too shocking, and kind of bring out concerns about instability, which again may rattle the markets. And then looking past that towards the very end of December and into 2022, we will see that, at least by Western astrology sort of approach, we will see that Jupiter is going to be entering again in Pisces right around the 29th, and will stay there through the around the 12th of May of 2022. And around late March, early April or so, it will be quite tightly conjuncting Neptune. So those kind of influences definitely will bring yet again attention to all the Neptunian matters, which again include oil, gas, precipitation, anything to do with pipelines, oil transportation of liquids in general, beverages, pharmaceuticals, chemicals, navy, anything to do with marine life, including seafood, oil pollution, pollution of water, availability of water, transportation of liquids, like I said, or through via some body of water. And at the same time, also Neptune and Pisces have to do with things like imagination, art, music, photography, movies, video, etc., and also things like mental health and drugs, and basically some illusion, which again could be a beautiful illusion like a dream, but it also could be illusion where just things are not clear and people are panicking because things are not clear, like underwater perhaps you can't see very well. So it could be a beautiful dream, or it could be just a nightmare where people are just panicking but for no good reason. And so this influence peaks right around, I'd say, 4th of April. Again, especially, I would say, March through April are the most intense times, which may coincide, as I previously covered in another video, with some examples with major flooding, major rainfall, or of course snowstorms that are greater than usual in scale, depending on where you are on the planet. But also it may coincide with just increase in actual just panic, where people are overreacting to things. And again, it could be a beautiful realization where they are just inspired and are looking deeper into their inner true dreams, and maybe people turn to like something that's like spiritually inspiring, or they realize they're inner artists and they start getting into photography and, I don't know, create some beautiful videos, you name it. And that's actually a great time if this particular transit, this conjunction of Neptune and Jupiter is well placed in your chart. At the same time, if it's not well placed, and that concerns individuals or companies or countries, it may again lead to basically extreme emotional sensitivity that may lead to basically excessive concerns where perhaps, like hypochondria type of situations where perhaps really there is no underlying true real cause for that. So that's something that will be intensifying, and I think it will peak, this influence will peak around the 4th of April 2022, with which I think we may also expect oil and gas prices rising through that time, also increased profits for pharmaceutical and chemical companies, increase either availability of or profits for companies that really, for example, are beverage companies, alcohol producers, any companies that again are dealing with, say, for example, shipping over water or, selling, exotic fish or something like that. Seafood prices may go up. So there will be just a lot of focus on this area. And again, I think that companies in those areas that perhaps are selling photography equipment, or like I mentioned before, have like a yoga studio or offer, tarot card reading or anything to do with like kind of this mystical side of life, so to speak, those businesses actually may do quite well, starting right about in January through spring of 2022. So now let's take a look at the important dates for 2022. I will make a separate video, or maybe even several videos, where I will cover 2022 in more detail. But for now, I think it's worth kind of recapping some of the important dates that will be coming up in 2022 globally. That I think maybe are not the best times for taking vacation, or perhaps just to be aware of, where things may be kind of intensifying globally, whether it's again bad weather, increased probability for various accidents, or just some international tensions, where again it's best to just kind of stay put and do something, something easy and relaxed, but away from big crowds. So one area, as just mentioned, one time period will be early April, where there may be increased probability of various like floods, precipitation, and just kind of bad, excessively wet weather, as well as just increased kind of just a sense where people may not be seeing things clearly. And again, some people may be truly feeling inspired, and some people just may experience some mental breakdowns because again, they will be fearing something that perhaps is unseen. And again, it's just best to kind of stay away from that kind of influence. Another time period that is going to be important is around August 1st, 2022, plus minus a few days, where there's increased probability of a major accident, major, say, an earthquake or some disaster, and it may involve especially anything that's flying, so perhaps excessive winds, or like an airplane, or like a really major storm where there's some power outages, or some fire explosion, like maybe a transformer exploding, or something that is accelerating too fast, like a high-speed train, but then suddenly comes to an abrupt stop instead of slowly rolling to a stop. So basically, too much speed, too much wind, and just kind of too much agitation may result in some sort of disaster. There's also increased probability of just shocking news, some sudden surprising that especially involve cryptocurrencies, banks, financial institutions. So just basically it's kind of a little bit of a jolting time where again, it's not the most relaxing time for, say, a vacation. Let's see, another important time period will be in the fall of 2022. So from about mid-September through the end of October, and especially around October 11, again, plus minus a few days, that's when we will have yet again a strong, tighter square between Saturn and Uranus, and especially between the 7th and the 15th of October. Yet again, there may be increased probability of maritime accidents, like fires that involve like a boat or ship or oil rig, or perhaps like a movie theater, any of these Neptunian locations, like a hospital, things like that. There may also be yet again an uptick in concerns about infectious diseases, just like what we have right now about this new variant. And again, people may just be more likely to kind of overreact and panic about it. And so I think in financial markets, there may be a major drop around October 8th through 14th of 2022, associated with, again, possibly concerns about the new variant of some sort, or just infectious diseases in general. For the global markets, or I guess for the planet, but also specifically what I think may be happening for Turkey and or China, and to be specific, Taiwan, early November, especially 1st through the 11th, and especially around the 8th of November 2022, also looks significant and difficult, where there is a increased probability rather of a large earthquake, and or an accident, like an airplane accident, for example, or a spike in some sort of militarized activities. So unfortunately, that's also the time where there might be some volatility in the stock market, especially for currencies, cryptocurrencies, concerns about debt, financial losses. So again, not the best time for traveling to areas that are earthquake prone. And again, I think it may be for China and for Turkey. And just to kind of quickly backtrack, I didn't look at, of course, chart for every country, but I did see that for Manila, for the horoscope for Manila, it did coincide with, not coincide, but it does have certain placements that may be affected quite a bit by this April 4th, plus minus few weeks transit of Neptune and Jupiter. So perhaps that will be the area of the world where the flooding that I expect to come, especially early spring of next year, is going to be felt more strongly than some other areas. But November 2022 may see some earthquakes or some increase of difficult tense situations, and that's, again, could be global, but also specifically looks like for China and or Turkey. Those may be a little bit more significant. And then finally for the US, the entire year of 2022, and going even into 23 and even into throughout, say, February of 24, so like really a long time, is when US will experience several important, slowly unfolding but difficult transits. One, of course, is the Pluto return. So it will be triggering some changes, like structural changes, especially when it comes to, indeed, infrastructure, government structure, or anything to do with like power stations, nuclear power, anything to do with power that's physical, literally power generating stations, and or infrastructure that supports governance, or the actual structure of large established corporations or established, I guess, governmental entities. So there may be a lot of changes in like leadership, etc. And at the same time, there may be some problems and concerns related to the second house, where Pluto resides in the U.S. horoscope. So some changes on some transformation that are related to finance, earnings, debt, currency value, and things of that nature. At the same time, there will also be Pluto opposition, and I guess it's kind of waning at this point, but there's still Pluto opposition to U.S. Mercury, which will have to do with some changes in telecommunication transportation area. And there is also a slowly unfolding transit of Neptune that will be entering. First, it will be opposing its own position, so some changes, but likely of a difficult type because of the opposition being a difficult transit, that have to do with oil and gas industry, as well as chemicals, pharmaceuticals, concerns about pollution, concerns about kind of making sure that there is no pollution of water, pollution of with chemicals, for example, but also changes in how that industry, like oil industry, indeed functions, and again, things that will be happening and unfolding over quite some time. I would say for, again, another year or so before things may become more clear, because Neptune is definitely a planet that brings a lot of uncertainty, both about the prices, but also about how the industry will kind of continue to grow, and definitely there will be some major changes that will last for decades to come. And after that, Neptune is going to enter the fourth house in the US chart, which has to do with things like real estate, agriculture, farming, banks' assets, and just homeland security. So Neptune may either bring literally floods, just excessive precipitation, which may perhaps pollute, of course, the soil, and or Neptune also has to do with chemicals, so there may be excessive perhaps pollution, maybe over use of fertilizers of some sort, which again may affect farming, for example, or food prices. There may also be some uncertainty. Again, Neptune is just kind of a lack of clarity and uncertainty, so there may be concerns about bank stability, concerns about real estate prices, real estate underwater, physically or figuratively speaking. So definitely some concerns. And also Neptune has to do with, again, water, where it seeps and it doesn't really know the borders. It doesn't know, or it doesn't really, I guess, it's not easy to stop. So if something is happening, it may not be very obvious, but it may also be happening such that it will be hard to stop. So if there are problems, like maybe a bank is experiencing some problems, it may not be very obvious that that's the case until, I guess, it's too late. So just definitely that sense of just uncertainty and lack of, I guess, clear vision into it is what itself may be more kind of damaging, I would say, for, I guess, kind of investors feeling certain about what to invest in than the actual events. But it definitely is a time of some transformation. And as I just previously mentioned, that November 8th is going to be, plus minus a few days, is going to be a difficult time globally. And for some countries, like especially I think China and or Turkey, they may experience maybe a stronger than usual earthquake, for example, or just some intensification of some difficult, tense events. At the same time, the 8th is, of course, the date where there will be midterm elections in the US. And it's interesting that it is going to be a day of the lunar eclipse, as well as where we will see moon nodes receiving multiple precise aspects, one of which being from Uranus, which will be conjunct one of the nodes. I forget which one, but basically it will definitely increase, I guess, both the significance of the events that are occurring at that time, which will have, will it be the lunar eclipse significant for about 6 years after that date. And with Uranus conjuncting, the nodes on the day of the eclipse, if we may expect some shocking events or events that are surprising, or just kind of, again, Uranus rules things like electricity, something like a jolt where people are just shaken up. And again, it may not be a pleasant sort of surprise. So definitely expect the unexpected. And again, from various accidents, like an earthquake, for example, to just, big storm with power outage, or something that's surprising or shocking, or just kind of makes investors feel unstable. And there may definitely be some interesting developments that will then have an effect, again, globally and for the US specifically, for about 6 months after that date. So definitely the 2022 is shaping up to be an interesting year, and I will get into more details, more specific predictions as I work in them. In the meantime, I hope you're having a fantastic week, and come back and check me out next time. Until then, have a fantastic week, everyone. Bye.